Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to Exploring Death. Today, Tricia Barker is with me, and she experienced a profound near-death experience during her senior year of college at the University of Texas. After learning to walk again, Tricia taught English in public schools and at colleges using love and guidance from the other side. Tricia has been featured in several publications, including I Survived, Beyond and Back, National Geographic, Simple Grace Magazine, and The Atlantic. Tricia's memoir, Angels in the OR, What Dying Taught Me About Healing, Survival, and Transformation, will be available in the summer of 2019. Tricia has a ton of fun interviewing NDEers, researchers, and healers on her YouTube channel. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you. I'm so glad to connect with you after meeting you in Seattle. That was a great conference.
It really was a great conference. And I was so excited to hear your experience. I was at your event that weekend, and I can't wait for my listeners to hear about your NDE experience. So are you willing to share that with us?
Oh, certainly. It's the story that most people ask me to share. It's the biggest life changer of my life.
Absolutely. So take us from the beginning. What happened?
Well, I was agnostic. I grew up in an evangelical home, and there was a lot of judgment, and I didn't feel comfortable with that religion. And I loved college. I loved learning, and I thought, okay, to heck with religion. I'm here at university. I worship in the lecture halls, and that's it. I have fun at the bars, and that was my life. And I really didn't, beyond this Walt Whitman-esque idea of an afterlife, of just kind of merging with the grass, because I was an English major, and I thought, maybe I just become one with everything. That was about as far as I took it, but I didn't care. I was young and healthy, and who cares? Well, college had its ups and downs, and I was suffering a bit my senior year, not processing a lot of wounds from childhood, and I decided that I was going to run the Austin 10K. And this was my symbol of getting my life together. If I ran this race, I knew I would be fine. Well, oddly, on the way to run that race, I had a head-on collision, and I broke my back in 3 places, and my spine was being compressed by some of the bone fragments. And I waited 17 hours in the operating room because I didn't have health insurance. And a lot of people asked me about that little detail. And it's not that they were being cruel and unusual. They were waiting for a neurosurgeon who would operate on me. And they couldn't make the call for pain medicine or for anything until a surgeon said, I'm going to operate on her. And one person declined, and I overheard that because nurses were talking, and he refused to come in. And then finally, a female surgeon came in, and she was off duty, and decided to take me in. And I thought all I could think about was my material world. My car was crushed, my spine was compromised, I couldn't feel my left leg. Was I going to walk again? What was going to happen? Everything in my world was material as I went into surgery. The minute I stepped out of form, I was so happy. Lisa, I can't tell you how excited I was. To die and be so joyful is a weird experience. Do you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. I had that experience when I came back from my shared death experience. When I came back to, the room that I was in, I was so happy and thrilled to see where my husband was going. So I have an idea of what you're talking about, at least for sure.
I thought you did, because it's ironic and it's bizarre to experience more joy in death than you ever thought possible. And that's what, I talk about it and write about it, and I say that my spirit wanted to do a little jig or a dance, like, oh my God, we go on, I just couldn't believe it. And I was so excited, wanted to tell people about that, come back that very moment. I was convinced the minute I realized my spirit form continued. But it was not over. I did not get to go back, right that moment. There were these huge angels that were standing behind the surgeons and at the foot of the bed, and they were sending this light through the surgeons and into my body. And at the time, this was very foreign to me. So this occurred in 1994, and I didn't have much knowledge about Reiki or light workers or any of this kind of thing that we hear about today. I just thought, bizarre, here's some angels sending light through the surgeons, but I knew that this light meant intelligence and healing. And it was determined that I would walk again by their healing. And so they were ensuring that, my spine would not be compromised, that I would get that feeling back in my leg, that everything would be okay. And they said, just be aware. They said, watch this, watch what we're doing, be aware that we can work through people. And that really stayed with me. I mean, that became an image, and that's why I call it Angels in the OR, my book, because I believed throughout the rest of my life that they could work through me in instances if I was doing what I needed to do, because these surgeons were not religious people. They were not people who, called on the angels, but the angels worked through them anyway, because they were in motion and doing what they needed to do. And I thought, okay, if I'm doing what I need to do, if I'm doing something in this world, there's always a chance that they might come through me and work in some magical way. Well, the near-death experience continued, because then I realized my body had flatlined. And so I guess that was more technically an out-of-body experience. And then when the machine flatlined, I thought, oh, I'm dead. And I realized how bloody surgery was and how gruesome it was. And I felt no connection to that body. And that's the weirdest sensation, to just leave it behind, like a garment you discard and go, done with that. Who needs that thing? and continue on. And I feel blessed in my story to have a verifiable incident, because that has brought a lot of researchers to my story. But I saw my stepdad getting a candy bar out of a vending machine, a Snickers bar. And then later my family confirmed that he did do that. And so I didn't know him very well, stopped and looked at him, and then continued on into the corridor, through the hospital, out over the night sky. And in that night sky, I began to feel one with everyone in that town. And I saw that at the heart of us all, we all kind of want the same thing. We want love and security and connection, and that most people are really good at their core. That's what I felt. And I felt just this love for human beings, just great, great love and connection. And then I began the life review, which was intense in places, but the light I felt the light of God beginning to show up in that review, as if I was being taught certain things. And so I stopped at different places, and I realized that I was kind of judgmental, as a lot of 22-year-olds are. And I thought, I don't want to hang out with these people. They're not as cool as me, or they're, they don't wear Doc Martens and listen to alternative bands. So they're not my type of people. And the light showed me that they were actually really beautiful, and they prayed, and they had these amazing hearts, and they actually cared about me. And then I was so humbled. I just thought, oh, there are people around me who truly care about me, and I blow them off. How ridiculous am I? And that was a wake-up call to just see the light in people, to see the love, and to be the love too myself, and to open up more, and to not be so closed in my thinking and who I wanted to associate with, and to give myself more love too. So I flipped through the places in my life that were kind of sad, and I didn't have to relive any pain that anyone had caused me. I really just saw how to be better. And then when I reached that heavenly landscape, it was so pure. Everything there was just pure. The best spring day in Texas, and we have great spring days here in Texas, doesn't compare to that green grass and that amazing place. And when I saw my grandfather, I wouldn't have recognized him, because I only knew him as an older man, but he was quite young in heaven. But he was on a truck that I recognized that he had left our family. And I think it was his way of just saying, hey, it's me, so he manifested this truck. And I got the sense that over there we can manipulate our form, we can think and go where we want to go, because I was already doing that. And so I chose to be a kid. So I was like about 5, because I was 22 when I died. Then I was 5, and I sat on the back of his truck and felt the peace that I felt when I knew him as a kid. And he asked me if I wanted to continue on toward God. And I saw that light, and then I felt the call and the beckoning, and I was like, of course I want to go there. Why would you not want to go there? That's the best place in the world. And so I just flew toward that light, and I felt people's prayers trying to pull me back. And the prayers, all of the words would come to me at once, and I'd feel them. and just acknowledge their spirit. And so I always tell people who pray for the dying that even if I had died, I would have known who prayed for me and I would have blessed them. It would have been like a waving goodbye or a hug goodbye. That prayer just was like a spiritual hug in a sense. And then as I flew towards God, I just felt better than I'd ever felt before. I didn't even know you could feel that good. And I feel lonesome for it, broken here, sad here, because I can't get to that feeling again. You know, I think we sound like drug addicts or something, you know, like
as you speak of this, my heart, I mean, I've got tears welling up in my eyes. My heart is bursting. I mean, I know that feeling and I so miss it too. And you're right, like drug addicts for
I need my high. I need my God.
I need my near-death experience. Give it to me, you know, hit me up.
But luckily, talking about it with people, I think brings it back. And I think that's what's so great about talking with other near-death experiencers.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, as I got closer and closer to God, I didn't realize you could feel ecstatic joy and ecstatic peace at the same time. I didn't realize that you could feel safe and secure and also totally free. And we always have these conflicting desires in form. Like, I want to feel safe. Oh, but I also want my freedom, you know?
Right. Yeah. We're never content. It's like we're schizophrenic, right? All the time.
And there you can have both. You can be totally safe and totally free. And that every broken crevice within me was healed. And who would want to come back to being broken and fractured? So as I was coming toward that love, a love that I'd never felt before, you know, I'd felt pieces of it with pets and family but very small pieces, and didn't want to come back. And then I was stopped and I felt almost like, you know, an energetic stopping. And God said, nope, you're going back. You've got things to do. Look down. And I looked down and I saw all these souls along a river. And I saw that some of the souls were lit up and they had a connection to God, and some had a cloud of fear over them. And it was those with the cloud of fear that I was really supposed to reach. And this could be insecurity, it could be pain, it could be many different things. It doesn't have to be anger or darkness. It can just be depression or sadness or just a lack of knowledge of that spiritual connection. And so I saw that and I knew I was going back to teach, but not in the spiritual teacher sense at that time, like literal teacher. Like, you have to go into public school systems, and it's like, no way, I know how much money they make. That's not what I'm doing. I was like, I grew up poor. No, thank you, God. That's not for me. And God just laughed. You know, like, so as I'm sitting there arguing, and I mean, I really did actually throw out, God, you know, I'm a feminist. I really don't want a traditional, you know, career. I want to do something that women don't do. I'm like, I want to make money. Come on, give me something else I can do. And God just laughed and was like, you're going to teach. And that was the last thing I heard from God. So when I woke up, I knew I had to teach. I was like, you can't hear God telling you to do something and then not do it.
That's right. Like, yeah, exactly.
It's like, darn. But it was the greatest thing ever. It was just exactly right for my personality. And there were so many kids who needed me.
Wow. And so then when you came back to your body, talk about that? Was that painful? Was it?
Oh yeah.
So from God saying you got to go back, like what?
Well, yeah. So I woke up after surgery and I was so disconnected from my body that I didn't even know my own name. So they're asking me, what's your name? You know, you're awake now. And I said, oh, I remember her. So I have to come back to her. And her name is Tricia. And they're like, no, that's your name. And I was like, it's her name. It's this body's name. You know, I'm out there. And they were like, okay, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And then I knew I died too. So I verified it with my surgeon. I was like, when's Dr. Flan coming? And I said, I died. So how long was I dead? And she was really taken aback. And she said, well, we thought we lost you for a couple of minutes, but you're fine now. You need a lot of blood transfusions. And I tried to ask specific questions. And I could see her just shaking her head like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like, don't
Wow.
go
But
down
she
this
didn't
path.
want to talk about it. Right. Right.
No,
Mm.
no, not at all. And so she kind of avoided me. She liked me before when I asked about her BMW and her degree. And, she liked me then. She did not like me as much afterwards. She kept pulling me back to the physical and how successful the surgery was, because she was proud, that they did a good job and that I had feeling in my leg. And I understood that. And I was happy she did a good job too, but I knew the angels had helped.
Right. Right. She wasn't doing it by herself.
Right. And I kept asking nurses and family members, I said, God is different than the way we talk about God. Do you really know God? And people would brush me off and go, well, she's had a lot of morphine. And, they would make fun of me instead of taking me seriously. And even though I was on morphine and all this pain medicine, I knew something major had happened, and I knew I was different, and I knew I'd never be the same. And it was, my life was profoundly different. There's a before and an after, and there's just no comparison. I mean, it's like the light switch being turned on. I was in darkness before with a little glimpse of light, and then it's just on.
Wow. I love that you talk about the light switch, because that's how I felt the first time I had an angel reading, that something, a flip was switched inside, that I was like, I have to learn how to do this. And so that's, I was on that path before I had my shared death experience. But
Wow.
I do think it is almost like a switch inside of us. And that, once you get that turned on, it's like you're on this path of knowing and seeking and finding.
Yes. Yeah. And
Wow.
I realized, like, interviewing other near-death experiencers, that even though I had a lot of physical pain and a long recovery, 4 months in a body cast and then learning to fully walk again, and even though I had that time, it was a blessing, because I got to lay in bed and meditate and focus on healing and connect with the angels and read about near-death experiences. And some people are just thrown back into life. They have a near-death experience and they're back at work, and they're in a marriage, and I was, a single young woman, with time on her hands. And so I did deep thinking about it all. And I had that year to integrate it, which was so helpful. I mean, there was panic, of course, and there was shock, and there was a lot to work through, but there was also huge breakthroughs with meditation and manifestation. And, and I got real playful with it, and just, would manifest random things here and there, and felt like a little bit of a shaman, from my bed.
That's bad. So give us an example of something you manifested. I love that.
Well, it took a month to do this, but I just picked a random scene. And I said, okay, I like Walt Whitman. And I pictured a guy wearing a hat like he wears in one of his books, the covers. And this guy, I pictured him coming up to me at the end of my recovery and saying, you need to go back to school now. And I pictured the scene, and then I happened to go out once I got out of the body cast and into a brace. Some friends I'd met at a poetry reading took me to hear a concert. And that exact guy that I had imagined in my imagination with the Walt Whitman hat came up to me, said, hey, are you from here? I said, no. And he's like, you're from Austin, right? And I said, yes. He's like, you need to go back to school now. It's time. And walked by. And I was like, what? So I just created this man out of nowhere. It freaked me out a little, to be honest.
Yes, that's amazing. I love that. And did you have any other changes? I mean, that's profound to be able to start manifesting, but were there other things that happened?
Yeah, so I was outside of time, and I called it, and then people always ask about this. Like, I think that certainly you can manifest with a lot of focused effort. So I had 2 months to lay in bed and try to make this one scene happen. Most of us are working, and we don't have that kind of time to put into a scene like that. And then being outside of time is a weird thing too, because what are you controlling and what are you not controlling? So I would get things that were 5 minutes or 10 minutes ahead of time, pretty exact. So I knew that a song would be on the radio. I would know it was playing before I went and turned the radio on, and I'd start singing it. And by the time I walked over to the radio, I'd turn it on right at the place where they were singing. And so I was like, am I hearing the radio frequencies? How do I know this? You know, what's really happening here? And then there were just moments where I started listening to my intuition, and the fan looked kind of wobbly, an overhead fan. And so I moved out of the way, even though I was doing my floor exercises and stretching. And the minute I moved, it fell. And I was like, oh no, I guess this fan really was about to drop. And so I just played around with little things here and there. I wasn't sure about how much psychic ability I had, but I knew I had a little. I knew that I was different than I had ever been. And I felt like I needed a teacher though. And maybe that's an important thing for near-death experiencers who are new, is to work with someone who understands how to use these things, and to start jumping into classes and start seeing how far they can take their abilities. Because I thought, well, I can't move to Sedona and go be a psychic. I've got to be a teacher, you know, and that's all I knew at that time. And I knew plenty of people who were packing up and going to Sedona, and as I just met them, you know, like you just kind of, you're on that frequency, and you just, you know, meet people randomly who were on that path. So I knew, okay, I've got to go teach. So I'll just use what I can in the classroom, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Wow. So I'm curious now, do you feel the angels working through you when you're teaching, or do you see them, or how?
Yeah, I would say a prayer before classes, and sometimes I would feel that energy come through, and it's definitely come through at times when I would call it channeling, where I've just don't even know what I've said halfway through a lecture, where I feel something come through me. And I've had at the college level, because I lecture more often, some students crying after class and want to hug me and say, I don't know why, but you're speaking exactly to me in that lecture, and thank you. And, you know, it's just a lecture to me, and I don't understand it. And so I know that sometimes that, you know, classes, there's only 30 students or less a lot of times. And if you're in that flow, then sometimes with literature or poetry, you can talk about human nature or struggles or philosophy in a way that helps someone's life. And I knew that my subject matter, it was easier for them to work through than, say, accounting or math and science. You know, like if you're talking poetry, you can talk about heartbreak. If you're talking about poetry, you can talk about grief and loss and love and hope and faith and all of these things that are very human, you know.
Wow, that's beautiful. And absolutely, what a wonderful experience for your students to be able to have such a tapped in teacher to, you know, bring through this energy, not only about, you know, the book you're speaking of or the poetry, but sounds like you're getting some divine wisdom coming through with it as well.
Yeah. And then at the college level, I get all ages. So I've had students who have lost kids, and, you know, they will talk to me about that. Or there have been moments to give some insight into someone's loss with a parent or with a child. And I ask if they would like, you know, a reading or what I'm getting. And a lot of times they're very open, you know, they're not judgmental about it or anything. And they're grateful usually. I'm sure you find that too, that people are just grateful.
Absolutely. And it is amazing how healing it can be to even just a sentence or two of them being able to connect to their passed away loved one can be so healing. So I'm curious, do you have advice maybe for people that have lost somebody and they either haven't connected with a medium or, you know, somebody, I mean, the grief in our realm in this 3D world is so profound. What do you like to tell people, or what comes through for you on that?
First, you know, even after a near-death experience, I do grieve. So I lost my father, and I've been through tough breakups and a divorce. And so I know how overpowering it is, and you can lose your spiritual connection in those moments, because it is like a weight is on top of you. It's as if this enormous mountain is pressing down on you. So first, don't beat yourself up if you're not getting connection with a loved one. It might be 1 year, it might be 5 years, it might be 3 months. You don't know when that connection might open up. It's usually going to open up in a dream first, because that's when you're going to be relieved of some of that grief and your spirit is in a more receptive state. So I would say first, just know that even if you are connected and you are a medium, you're probably going to suffer just like anyone else. And I certainly did. And it was a relief to hear my father when I did hear him. But there was still a lot to figure out. There was a lot to process of well, I don't have him at Christmas. I don't have him in my life. I can't pick up the phone and call him. And it's a different type of connection. It's a fun connection because now I have friends who are mediums, and we can all talk to them out there. And it's great. But for those who haven't yet connected, I would say just keep trying. Intuitively look for that medium who's going to be right for you. And find that. And then more than anything, I think there are even some mediums who are teaching other people to open up themselves. And so that's really key, is no one is going to understand the symbols and signs that your ancestor is trying to give you than you. So, that's a reason to take a class on that. I think Suzanne Giesman and a few others teach others how to connect more.
I love that. That's wonderful. And I totally know what you mean, because when I lost my mother 4 years ago, I mean, this is what I do, right? I connect to dead people and I'm a medium, but it just took my breath away, and I suffered deeply and for a long time. So, even if you are connected, and even though I did have a beautiful experience, her whole soul came to me. It was like a tsunami of her love, just wrapped over me. And so I have that connection, but once they're gone, like you said, you can't just pick up the phone and yes, I can connect with her, but it's just a different experience. It's not that 3D connection that we have here on Earth. So it's a process.
Have you read The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, that book?
No, I've heard of it. People have mentioned it. I've got to write it down too.
Yeah, I love it. And so other people who have lost someone, because she follows her brother for so long in the afterlife. And it resonated with me because I followed my dad, and I was curious, hey, is your life review longer? Oh, it definitely was. He reviewed literally every choice he could have made and saw all the different realities that would have played out from the smallest of choices. And it's like, that gives me a headache. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to think about that in life. That what if I choose to say this instead of this? Will the whole world rock off center? It's a little bit weighty to think of that.
That's right. But I guess when we're on the other side, we have all of eternity to look at each one of those and think about that. But wow, that's a long life review.
He said it wasn't that big of a deal, that I was making too much of it here in my mind. And then he always jokes. He's like, see you soon. And I'm like, I am not going to die that soon, Dad. And he's like, nope, life is soon. And he just reminds me of how short it is here, that we think it's so long. But
that is for sure. I feel like that's been a theme on the last couple of podcasts, because it's almost like, days are long, years are short, because I can't believe here it is October already this year. And I'm like, where did those last 10 months go? But yet, and I think that's what we'll look back at our life once it's done, and it's like a snap of the fingers, how quickly that we were actually here. So.
Right. And then it's just, how much did we push the gas pedal down with love,
Yes.
in each moment, and how could we love more? How can, even if it's just ourselves or just a pet or just a walk or just a tree, how do we love more?
Absolutely. That's so good. And that's the probably the thread that comes through most when I channel people that have died, is they all say, if I'd only known that I could have done so much more, that there was so much, if I had just been bolder and brighter in everything they did, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to create and to manifest and to have fun and really go far. And yet, like you said, those people with the clouds over the top of them, whether it's fear or, being scared or anger or whatever, it keeps us from being our biggest selves. So it's really us that keeps us from expanding to our brightest light here on Earth.
It's funny too, like we can look back to our younger selves and say, oh my God, I had all that power. Why didn't I use it? Like we do that, when we look back in the past. And so I'm sure we do that at the end of our lives too. And it is a reminder. I mean, a near-death experience is a great reminder to love every moment, to treasure every moment, but to also see unlimited potential in every relationship and every experience, and to see the magnitude of how things can go and how they can change directions and how amazing it can be.
That's for sure. Well, I would love to do a reading for you right now if you're open to that.
Right, that's a good time when we're talking about
yes, unlimited potential.
Yes. Pull that card.
Yeah, let's see where that goes. Okay, we'll see exactly what's coming up here. So the first card is usually the blockage card, and so I've got compassion here. And what I'm getting there, and it's kind of along the lines of what we were talking about. It's like, having compassion for yourself and not being hard on yourself, and really, as much as there's this unlimited potential to be this giant, huge thing, it's also perfectly okay to just be who you are right here, right now. There's no better, there's no worse. It's all perfect. And to just have compassion for yourself in that. And so your action card, oh my gosh, I've got chills as I put up miracles, is you are a miracle. The fact that you came back after flatlining, and that you had that near-death experience, and that you've had that taste of the other side, and you can see miracles. And so what's coming through is just, you can create any miracle you want at any time. And it's about letting go of those little talking figures, in our heads that say you can't do that, because you can. And sometimes we forget, even though we've been to the other side, even though we know that pure love that's available to us at all times, we forget that miracle is available to us 24/7. And then the outcome card, oh my gosh, is grace. Is that, you'll just be floating in that pure essence of grace that is who you are. And the more that you can be that beautiful, graceful swan that's in this picture, the more will unfold for you for your highest and greatest good.
Beautiful. That was really beautiful. I love the 3 parts.
Well, good. Does that resonate with you about taking care of yourself and compassion and those miracles around you?
And that's the strangest part of the journey, isn't it? We can have so much love and compassion for other people, and then beat ourselves up for not healing quick enough, or not getting over something quick enough, or whatever it is that we want to beat ourselves up about. We can do that, and instead of just praising ourselves for coming as far as we've come, like we would have compassion for a kid. Why can't we have compassion for ourselves?
Absolutely. And I think that's so prevalent in our community, in our society. It's somehow we have to be this perfect person all the time, and have everything, exactly the way. And it's so difficult in the social media where everybody has their highlight reel going 24/7. And so your stream, as you're looking at it, you're like, oh my God, I'm none of these things. I don't have any of these things. And yet it's all just fake, talking about fake news. We're all trying to show off who we are. And yet, like you said, we just want to be loved and cared for. And the only person that can really do that is us, for ourselves. And then hopefully we get to be surrounded by others that think we're pretty good too.
Yeah, I think I saw it in some comedian's talk where he was saying, we're the ultimate politicians. We're holding babies and puppies, and I'm doing this great thing, and here I am volunteering. And he's like, no one's real on social media anymore. And so, yeah, I do want to just wake up and be just like crying and like, this is who I really am. I'm a mess right now. I haven't eaten in 3 days.
That's right. Yeah. And it's funny. I just saw a post by somebody who's rather famous. And that was kind of, she's like, all I want to do is eat my feelings. Does anyone else feel this way? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the beginning of this whole new authenticity,
Right. And it's a balance, right?
It is. And somebody else was just mentioning too about, I think it was George Orwell. It was the whole thing about, in the future, it's like cameras are going to be on us, like Big Brother is going to be watching us from all angles. But instead, no, we're the ones that have the cameras on us. We've all brought cameras into our homes, and the biggest fear we have is that nobody's going to see us, that we're so it's like been turned upside down in the whole, like, oh gosh, we're going to be invaded in our privacy. No, we're invading our own privacy, trying to get everybody to look at me.
Right. I talk about this with students all the time about the need to set it down and to actually enjoy certain moments, to leave your phone at home while you go on a walk and sit underneath that tree, that if you don't document it, it's okay. It was still there. It was still important.
That's right. It is important to live our life without that social media following us every second. And I find myself, like, I go down to watch a sunset at the beach, and if I don't have my phone, I get into a little panic, like, oh, I didn't get, and I'm like, I have about 10,000 sunset photos on my phone. And I think one night of no photo is going to be a problem.
Oh, I know. You people in Hawaii, you have sunset photos for the rest of your life to put up on your walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Send me a few. I don't have any of those.
That's right. Well, Tricia, this has been so much fun. How can people get a hold of you? I know I'm going to have all your links, but go ahead. You can just tell us where they can find.
So I would love it if you go to my website, which is triciabarkernde.com, and send me an email. I love questions about near-death experiences, because sometimes I put together a video, like I'll pull together some of the best questions and just talk with people who have them. And that's a fun thing for me to do. So I'd love you to contact me or follow me on my Facebook page. And of course, check out some of the interviews. I interviewed Howard Storm, and that one tends to get to a lot of people, but I've interviewed lots of different near-death experiencers, and I've got a healer couple coming up. I'm excited to interview a couple of couples in the future, which is fun.
Fabulous. And again, your book will be coming out in the summer of 2019.
Yes. Yeah. So the ebook and Audible will be through Simon & Schuster, and it will, the hardback will be a paperback. I don't think they're going to have a hardback, first of all, and that's through Post Hill Press. So I'm excited to have it out there, and there's still a lot of work from here until the summer with little details and book covers, and there's a huge acknowledgement page. When you write a book, you need like 1 million people to look at that book before it's done. So it's been a journey.
That's
been
right.
Fun.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for your time. This has been so fun and so delightful. And I hope we run across each other again.
Thank you. This has been amazing. Your show's so lovely. And yeah, I've got to come to Hawaii. There's a lot of reasons why I need to, but you're one of them now.
Fantastic. Well, you're welcome anytime. So thanks again for being on Exploring Death podcast. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.